Okay, so now we would like to continue the topic of patient involvement in clinical research. And we have had this fantastic talk by Vinette this morning, and I also have had the opportunity to have some breakfast with her to talk about some issues. And I would like to take you on a journey now in the direction of our developments now in Germany with the whole topic of patient involvement in clinical research. So it's called the NCT patient involvement, and NCT stands for National Center for Tumor Diseases. So this is not only for sarcomas, it's for all types of cancer. Okay, let's start. And we talked yesterday about this topic. What means commitment of patients, for patients or with patients? And this is our main goal as patient-organized structures, is we want to achieve changes. For the individual patient, that's what we are doing every day, by information, support, coping, solidarity, and a lot of these issues. So that's what we call patient support. But also for many patients, and this means the representation of interests means patient advocacy in different areas. And looking to our history in Germany, Germany is very strong when it comes to patient support. We have a lot of patient support groups in Germany, and there's a specific term in Germany, it's called Selbsthilfegruppe, self-help group. It's a specific term in Germany, but this means patient support. And they are really close to the patients. They are doing a fantastic work in Germany, but we failed in Germany for many, many years to be much more involved in political activities, but also in research, for example, compared to other countries. So that was a clear decision, we need to do a better job in Germany, together with our medical colleagues and with the researchers, to drive this topic of patient involvement forward. And we just have heard this morning, and you might recognize the same picture with Steve Jobs, and I'm happy always, this is just by chance that we are using the same picture, because Steve Jobs is talking about customer experience. And in many other industries, for example, in the automotive industry or in the IT industry, it is absolutely normal to involve the customer into the research process. In the meantime, they call it co-creation. That means products or solutions are created together with the customer. Unfortunately, over many, many years, the medicine or cancer research has never seen patients as customers. And I don't think about patients as customers as payers, but as customers in the direction of service. So because also patients want to have good service, they also want to have good solutions, but they also have to contribute something to the table as customers or as patients. And our colleagues in the UK, they are doing this now for nearly 20 years, public and patient involvement. And we in Germany are in a very early stage, in a very early phase now to do this in a very active and very organized way. And we have heard this morning also from Vinette, why is it so important to involve patients as early as possible? It's about the experience. Patients have a lot of experience, a unique expertise they can bring to the table. And what we have learned so far, very often, sometimes the perspective of the physician is different than the perspective of the patient or of the relatives, or maybe also of the needs or of the ideas, of the priorities. It's about communicating expectations, but also challenges. It's about prioritization of research questions. We talked a lot about this morning, but we talked also about patient-relevant endpoints, about real-world data, and a lot of different issues. So there are a lot of reasons to work together and really to work in partnership together. Patient involvement in clinical research does not mean, and this is very important, and we have had the discussion yesterday with Stefan Fröhling, that now patients suddenly want to become researchers. That's not our job. We don't want to become researchers. We want not to compete with the researchers. That's not our job. But we can bring the patient's perspective to the table. And this started in Germany, and I think we talked about yesterday briefly about a very interesting initiative from the government. It's called the National Decade Against Cancer. This was launched 4 or 5 years ago with a lot of very, very good initiatives, research initiatives, but also some very strong messages to all the stakeholders. And one of the process, or one part of the process, was that there was a bottom-up process about principle of successful patient involvement in cancer research. And this process was done together on a European level, together with Germany, Portugal, and Slovenia. They did this together in a process, so patient advocates in Europe have had the opportunity to be involved in the whole process. And at the end of the whole process, our ministry, in collaboration with Portugal and Slovenia, they come up with this guideline, Principles of Successful Patient Involvement. And you can find this document on the website of the German Ministry of Research and Education. You can download this in English. So this helps a lot to understand what are the principles of doing this. And we also founded in Germany what we called an Alliance for Patient Involvement in Clinical Research. A lot of stakeholders in Germany, this was something like a public initiative, they signed for this alliance in patient involvement of clinical research. So I think this is very important, that this was really driven by patients, by researchers and doctors, but also by the politicians, means by the ministry. So I think that was really a very important topic to drive this forward. So what does this mean? It means at the end of the day, research in partnership with or by patients instead of research only for patients or about them. And we learned today from our colleague Vinette that could be different roles. Patients are normally, let's call them research objects in clinical trials. So they are taking part in clinical trials, but we want to move further on. So there are different other roles of patient advocates that, and they could play different roles in the research process. For example, they could provide information. For example, we heard this morning practical support. I think Vinette called it to listener to the doctors and to the patients. But also patients can be advisor in different situations. They also can be auditors, for example, in application processes. And this has changed a lot in Germany, because now when researchers are writing applications to the government for funding, patient involvement must be part of the application. And on the other side, at the government and with the government together, we have patients and auditors who look exactly whether patient involvement is done or not, or is maybe patient involvement is just done as lip services or something like this. So it's very important to have this structure in place. And then we have, for example, sometimes patients can be co-researchers and hopefully also in the future more and more partners. But what we also have learned, patients specifically in rare diseases or in rare cancers could be also driving forces of research. They sometimes could be also financiers or financer of research, specifically in very rare diseases. So I think there's the very, very good example of the Cordoma Foundation. They are very active, for example, in driving research forward. So there are different roles for patient advocates in this setting. So our idea is now, instead of just being research objects, we need to transform the whole process step by step. And what I learned from my colleague in the UK, from Roger, and we talked about this will not happen overnight. This will take a lot of time, a lot of transformation process within the next years to make this happen. So some of our organizations in Germany, they are still cooperating with researchers or with doctors in clinical research and clinical trials. Yesterday, you have seen this example, master program, Heroes Aya. These are projects where we, for example, are involved as research partners. Sometimes we also see patient experts that are much more integrated. As we have heard yesterday, the Aya project, this is really an integration of a patient organization into a project. But what we want to achieve on a long-term goal is that we really want to have a partnership. And this really needs a new mindset. It needs a cultural change within the next years. And why are we doing this? Not because we want to play researchers. We want to make research hopefully faster, more efficient, more targeted, more patient-oriented, and hopefully timely, faster to the patient. That's our motivation, so that we get innovations faster to the patients together with our medical colleagues. Because from many talks with our medical colleagues, they are sometimes very frustrated. The medical colleagues are very frustrated how long things take time until they really can be realized because of bureaucracy, because of hurdles and a lot of different other issues that are becoming more and more problematic. So it's our interest, our common interest, together with our medical colleagues, to drive things also faster and to make things more in the direction of the patient. So this is the process we want to follow or to achieve. This is an example from our colleagues, and many of you know our friend and colleague Jan Geisler and also Bettina Rill. They have created this chart with the drug development process. You see the drug development process in a very simple way, but you can realize that there are a lot of opportunities to involve patients into the whole process. And sometimes, these are the green boxes, you need something like a lower level of information or lower level of knowledge. You need your patient experience, bring your patient experience to the table. And sometimes, these are the red boxes, you need to have patients, patient advocates who have some research knowledge. That means they are trained. They understand the research projects, they understand clinical trials, protocols, endpoints, and something like this. So we need different patients. Not every patient needs to be an expert. And so it depends on the situation, it depends on the questions, and it depends also what researchers need to know from us, because they need to ask us what they don't want or what they want in the whole process. So this is something like such an example in this direction. Now, what we are doing now with the so-called NCT? Going a little bit back, this NCT, National Center for Tumor Diseases, was launched many years ago in Heidelberg. And then there was a second location in Dresden. So Heidelberg and Dresden, they had been very active as NCTs running clinical trials. And I will come to this a little bit later. And within the whole process, as I mentioned before, of this decade against cancer, there was the idea and the need, the necessity to expand the NCT to more locations. That means to make the NCT bigger as a unit, as a clinical trial unit. And so there was a selection process in Germany where these kind of comprehensive cancer center, they could send applications in to become an NCT location. And then there was the government, means the ministry, but also an international review board, very well-known international cancer researchers. So the decision was not driven by German researchers or German oncologists. I think it's very important because you want to really make clear and fair decisions, and not just because you like people very much, then say, okay, you become NCT. So it was an independent auditors that really make the decision. And the decision ended up with a clear concept to expand the NCT in the future to 4 more locations. And one location is the NCT, or will be the NCT Berlin. mainly, and you have heard about Charité. Charité is one of the main drivers behind the NCT Berlin. Then we have the NCT West, and the NCT West means the Comprehensive Cancer Center of Essen and Cologne in collaboration. Then we have the NCT Southwest, and this means Tübingen, Ulm, and Stuttgart. And then we have another area, and this is in Bavaria, it's called the Vera, and Vera means Würzburg, Erlangen, Regensburg, Augsburg. So these are the four new NCT locations. And what's here is the DKFZ, and you have yesterday, from the talk with Stefan Fröhling, he also mentioned several times the DKFZ. And this is our basic research facility in Germany. They have more than 3,000 employees doing basic research in cancer or for cancer. And this is the consortium with these 6 locations, and with the DKFZ, they are building now the new expanded NCT. But not overnight. It took us 2 years to develop a strategic concept for the new NCT. It's a book, 360 pages, is really a book with a whole strategy, how we want to realize the NCT. But one of the major topics, and this came by the ministry, and this is our the head of the ministry in Germany for research and education, we had a clear guidance from the ministry that patient involvement must, not should, or may, or whatever, must play a major role within this NCT. And so patient advocates had been involved in the whole development of the strategy. That means we created together this book, and we are also co-authors and co-owners of the book as patients and physicians and researchers together. So we are happy and we are really motivated regarding the collaboration within the strategic phase, but also now to perform and to build up this new NCT. And on the 2nd of February, our ministry in Berlin, they announced that the expanded NCT is approved and that the NCT will come now over the next years. What does NCT mean? I don't want to tell you the whole story about the NCT, only just a few facts. As I mentioned before, it's about the DKFZ, and university medicine means oncological top centers in Germany. They are building together this NCT. So we have 6 locations plus the DKFZ, but 1 NCT. So it's a one network is working together as one NCT. And what is the main objective? What is the main idea of the NCT? We want to do quality patient-related research. That means we are building a trial platform in Germany for early academic-driven innovations for clinical trials. Because, and this is this graphic over here, in Germany we have very good basic research. For example, I just mentioned the DKFZ. We also have very good basic research via the university, but also DKTK, this is another important network. And on the other side, we have a lot of clinical trials that are performed by the industry, big clinical trials where also German centers take part. Where we in Germany have an enormous bottleneck are the early academic-driven trials. That comes from research in Germany, that comes from academic research, and to be able to bring this as fast as possible to the patient. And this is our bottleneck. And we did something like an international comparison of these kind of early trials. And unfortunately, Germany, compared to many, many countries, Germany is quite very behind when it comes to these early trials. So that was the motivation to try this, to really bring this forward, because we need to bring more innovations earlier and faster to our patients. And that was the main driver. And as I mentioned before, patient involvement will be an enormous success factor in the whole story. So in the conceptual phase, but also in the performance of the implementation of the whole concept, patient involvement will play a major role. The plan is now from the government to spend every year more and more money until 2030. In 2030, the whole amount will be around about 98 million for clinical trials, cancer trials in Germany. This means, on the other side, when you look to this column to this table on the other side, that hopefully, this is our plan for the next years, that we are able to perform with the NCT round about 285 trials per year, new trials per year, and this will offer around about 7,000 slots for patients. So that's the driver for us from the patient community. Patient involvement is very important, and patient involvement should be a major part of the NCT, but our main interest is to deliver more innovations and more opportunities to our patients as early as possible. That's what that drives us forward in doing this. This is our national, what we call NCT Patient Research Council. So these are very nice colleagues. So we built this during the conception phase, and now it is officially in charge. That means we have a national cancer patient research council that is driving patient involvement forward within the NCT, but also in collaboration with other partners in Germany. And you can see these people are coming from different indications. So we have rare cancers, lymphoma, breast cancer, different areas. You can't put every kind of cancer in such a board, that's not possible, but these guys have a lot of experience in patient involvement in research, but they also have a lot of different background and a lot of skills. For example, Ulla, you can see this lady Ulla, for breast cancer patient. She has a lot of experience in biobanking, for example. Then we have other people who have a lot of experience in cancer registries, or we have people with a lot of experience in precision oncology. So that means this is a team with a lot of different skills, and I'm really happy and I'm really honored to work with these people in really driving the agenda forward. We also, during the process, identified our priority research topics, and these are some, I would call it, scientific research topics that are important for the scientific world, but we also have had the opportunity to identify and to integrate two research topics that are important to patients from our perspective. And one is about research on fair and equal patient access. Because in Germany, we don't have a lot of research about patients, for example, from other countries living in Germany. Do they have access to clinical trials? How good is the access to clinical trials? What about patients from underserved communities, maybe from social different areas? Do they really have access to clinical trials? We don't know. So we need to do more research in this so that patients have a better, fair and equal access to clinical trials. This will be one of our research topics. And the other research topics is, and we have heard about this today, patient-reported outcomes, because patient-reported outcomes is a very, very important topic, will be more and more important, and that's where we need also as a community will do more research in the future. So these are two research themes or topics that had been integrated into the portfolio by the patients, coming from the patients. We also have had the opportunity to influence the priority disease areas. So we have had discussions with our colleagues, with our medical colleagues in the so-called steering committee, and in the early setting, they are used to talk about lung cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer. So they are normally used to talk about the common cancers. But we made very clear that we also, as an NCT, need to take care about rare cancer patients. And so we have had the opportunity to put rare cancers as a so-called priority disease area into the portfolio of the NCT. And we will start now within the next months and years with brain tumors, pediatric cancers and sarcomas. But there will be a lot of other rare cancers like neuroendocrine tumors, head and neck cancers, and so on. But this is also driven by patients to put rare cancers into the research arena. That was also driven by the patients. This is our concept. In a very brief overview, what are the elements or what are the building blocks of our concept? It starts with a mission statement. So we developed something like a mission statement, a philosophy, patients as research partners. That's the philosophy with a lot of different issues. Then we also planned, and in the meantime, we started to execute this, something like a structure, a network in Germany within the NCT for the National Patient Research Council, but also regional patient council. Then we are also part of the governance. For example, 2 of the patients are sitting in the steering committee of the NCT. That means we are really co-deciders. So it's not about that we are advisors, we are really, we make co-decisions together with our colleagues from research and from the medical departments. So then we need patient involvement, we need something like a visual identity within the NCT, but also outside the NCT. We need a concept for recruiting and onboarding of new patient representatives. And we already did some tests, and this is working well. We also need a system, a transparent system to compensate patient experts, because we can't do this all on a voluntary basis. That's not possible. It's not that we need another income or something like that. That's not our idea, but we need a compensation for our work. Maybe it's only a part-time compensation, but we need to be honored or evaluated for our work. And this will be part of the future NCT, that all our work will be compensated. Then, and this is the red box in the middle, I always mention we need a new culture, a new mindset, that patients as research partners is a very cooperative and very valuable topic. And this means, on one side, that each project that will be, or each study that will be performed or will be started within the NCT should have patient involvement on board. And we are already started with the first, we call it synopsis. That means we started with trial ideas. And also in this trial ideas, we start now to integrate patients into the process of building ideas together with our medical colleagues. And on the other side, also our medical colleagues, the researchers and the experts, they need training and support for patient involvement in clinical research, because many of our colleagues from the medical community, they don't have experience. That means we need also to train them, we need to also to support them how we do patient involvement in clinical research. We also identified together so-called fields of action, and I will come to this in a minute. We created a patient expert academy, PEAK, because it's absolutely clear, if we want to have patients involved in research, we need to train them. We need to educate them how research works, what is the language of research, how do clinical trials are performed, what is a clinical trial, what is the protocol, what are endpoints, and all these issues. And we also created an annual patient expert conference, patients as research partners. You see, this is a whole program that should be performed during the next years. And our plan is to do this within the next 3 years, to set up the whole concept together with full-time professional. That means patient involvement in clinical research will get in total 10 full-time employees to get this done, because we can't do this as patient on a voluntary or on a part-time basis. That's not possible. We need qualified people within the NCT, paid by the government, that we are really able to run this forward, this whole process. So this is the network, as I mentioned before. So we have the National NCT Patient Advisory Council, we have PEAK as the Patient Expert Academy, and we have the conference. And we also need to do national networking, because there are national organizations that are also involved now for several years in patient involvement or patient involvement in clinical research. And we always made clear that the NCT is not an island. So we need to work together with other people and really need to drive this forward together with other people. And then we have these six locations, the 2 older locations, Heidelberg and Dresden, and the 4 new locations, and we have the DKFZ. So that means we have a full network of patient involvement in clinical research within this network, but also the regional patient councils need to have a network, something like a relationship, a communication with the regional patient organizations or with the regional patient structures in place. So this is a cooperative network. It's not just that the National Patient Council is the chair and everyone has to follow the National Patient Council. No, we try to work in a very cooperative way with modern digital technology. We will have a project management software and a lot of different issues. We will work together in this network. So I already talked about the 12 identified fields of action, and this was coming out, or this was the result of our discussion with our medical colleagues and the whole process. So we have 3 main columns. This is the first column, and this means direct support to patient and relatives. That means, for example, health literacy, because we have seen that patients have to learn a lot about oncology, about precision oncology, but also about clinical trials, because we have seen a lot of patients, they don't know what is a clinical trial and how is a clinical trial organized. So we also need to think about how can we do this better in the future. And there is a famous organization in Germany, also from the DKFZ. It's called the Cancer Information Services, the Krebsinformationsdienst. And they are also doing a lot of work, and we will work together with them to inform better our patients. But then we need patient-friendly information on the NCT website. So in the future, every clinical trial that should be started or will be started within the NCT will have a profile in lay language, so that every patient is really able to understand the clinical trial and really understand what will be part or what will be the content of the clinical trial. But also we want to transfer the results of clinical trials in patient-friendly language. That's another issue. Then I already mentioned this study support for patients with a migration background or from underserved communities. We have also to think about our Turkish colleagues in Germany and different other areas, how we can do a better job in the future. And we also need to think about shared decision making before clinical trial decisions, before study decisions. So this is about direct support to the patient. Then we have general improvements in clinical research and trials. The first issue is about informed consent. This is still sometimes a nightmare, where we can do a much better job to inform and to give better information and more understandable information to our patient. But also we want to do a lot of work in the patient-reported outcomes. That's another topic. Then we also want to start to evaluate patient satisfaction in or after studies. We normally only include patients into clinical trials, but very often we don't ask them how satisfied they had been in the clinical trial. So how good was the information? How good was the support by the medical team? So we need to understand this better. And then we also need to think about the generation of additional real-world data and additional real-world evidence. And the third area, these are, as we mentioned, patient as research partner, but also common future topics. The first topic is about, as I mentioned before, we need to train our colleagues from the researchers, from the physician community, and give them the support. As I mentioned before, today, if you are running a patient focus group, how do you run a patient focus group? How do you organize a patient focus group? What is important from a patient perspective? So we also need to develop tools and instruments, but also procedures, how we want to perform this. Then we want to explore together more the field of digital health in digital or so-called virtual studies. That means, how can we use tools in digitalization better to make clinical trials better, faster. Maybe that also patients, maybe they are in contact with the trial center once a week because of telemedicine, or they collect data via smartphone or via app or whatever. So there are a lot of tools from the digital area that could be used or could be integrated in so-called digital or virtual studies. And that's a topic in Germany. We really need to develop this together. And then we have the whole topic of personalized oncology or precision oncology, because this is an upcoming area also in Germany. We have a lot of programs in the meantime. We yesterday talked about the master program, then we have lung cancer programs and different other programs. And we need to manage also the expectations, because think about the situation of the patient who is now offered to be part of such a procedure, of such a precision oncology procedure. What about the hope of the patient? What about the expectations of the patient? How can we manage this? How can we inform, communicate with the patients? And these are the issues we really need to develop together. And then we have the last area, and this is also, as I mentioned, for Germany, very important. It's about the research and regulations, the removal of hurdles and bureaucracy in Germany, because every year it becomes longer and longer to perform clinical trials. Currently, we have a lot of discussion in Germany about data protection and a lot of these issues. So there are a lot of issues where we need to do together. We need to do a better job. So these are the fields of action where we want to work together with our medical colleagues in the future. Sometimes we do this in a centralized way. Sometimes we do this with some of the regional locations. So it depends on the resources within the next months and within the next years. These are pictures from our first conference, Patients as Research Partners, and we have done the conference last year in Heidelberg with around about 80 participants. And these had been patient advocates who are really interested and motivated in clinical research. And we have had 3 days. It was a wonderful experience. Really, we have had a fantastic presentations, fantastic interaction with people. And you see again our ministry over here, the lady from the chair from the ministry. She was very willing to give something like a opening speech to the conference and all. So you see, there's a high motivation to drive things forward. And we are now just preparing our second national conference. And this will be also in September in Heidelberg. We are just finished the program, and we are absolutely convinced that this time we will see maybe around about 120, 150 people, because the interest is becoming much more during the last months. So this meeting is about to learn, to cooperate, and to change. And so we will do the next step within the whole program. And this is the last step and the very important step. This is the National Patient Expert Academy called PEAK. And we started this in mid-2021 with a first pilot course on patient involvement in clinical research. And the idea is that we need something like a leadership academy for patient representatives. So it's about quality, it's about excellence, it's about leadership, but also patient practice orientation. And we identified 4 areas of education that should be offered in the future by PEAK. The first area is patient as research partners, as I mentioned before. The second part is about structures and management of patient organization, because we realized that many patient organizations in Germany are really motivated to learn more about how to run a patient organization, how to manage it, and how to do this and how to do that. So we also need to do a better job in this area. Then we have another area, this is advocacy and evidence. That means evidence-based advocacy. That means that also patient representatives learn how can they underlay or undermine their requests with data, with arguments, with facts, and there are a lot of opportunities to do this. So this is a learning experience where we can learn together more to have stronger arguments. It's not just enough to stand up to a doctor or maybe to a politician and say, we need this drug. This is wonderful, but they will not listen to this. So we need stories, we need data, we need facts, we need arguments, how we really move forward in this field. And the fourth area is about digital health, because we all know that we are moving now in the area of digital health. That means we also need to train our patients more in the field of digitalization. For example, electronic patient records, portals, apps. There are a lot of issues where it really makes sense to train our patient colleagues. So these are the four areas, but our main interest within the NCT is to concentrate on the field one, patient as research partners. This is our current website of PEAK, just unfortunately only in English, but as I mentioned, only in German, but in the moment, this is just a development phase. We will move forward within the next months. And in the moment, if we have 2 full-time employees, a lot of things will be much easier than really to run this and really drive this forward. Currently, our German Sarcoma Foundation is more or less a provider of the website, but this is not the final solution. We will come up with a totally different solution. So this is the example how we plan to build up patients as research partners. So the idea is to create 3 modules. The first module is the basic module with 20 hours. We start with a presence meeting, 2 days, and then we will do online courses, and we have done this in 2021. Then the second module, that's the advanced module, is about 30 hours, means 20 hours online teaching or online studies and 10 hours self-study, case studies and something like this. And the third module is then the expert module with 40 hours, with 20 hours presentation, but also then case studies, self-study. So we have had the idea to build different modules because our concerns had been, if we start to give patients something like a training course and say, okay, you can do a training course, but this will last 1 year. Maybe some of the patient advocates are shocked because the question is always, am I really able to do a commitment for 1 year? But if I have the opportunity to start with module 1 and then maybe, let's face it, half a year break, and then I do module 2. It's much more flexible for patient advocates to do this. And this is the content is about cancer, cancer treatment, precision oncology. It's about cancer research. So how is cancer research organized in Germany, for example, or maybe in general? But also, what about clinical trials? And clinical trials are one of the major issues. You can talk hours about clinical trials, about the basics, about what is the protocol and what are the endpoints, how to perform clinical trials for special groups, for example, clinical trials for rare cancers patients, clinical trials for children. And so there is so much stuff within the next years really to talk to and really to give our colleagues input. But also some specials, healthcare system, digital health, and so on, and also case studies. We started the first course with 40 participants from the NCT, and in the meantime, we are doing interims, or I would call it monthly offers by PEAK to run the academy, and then to wait until we have the full-time personnel to run the academy then in a full-time mode. And in the meantime, we have more than 300 people who are really contributing or participating on a regular basis within PEAK. So it's a really good development, and the feedback so far from our colleagues from the patient community is quite very, very good and very promising. It helps us, we are really motivated to drive this forward. So this is the module, how we build up the course over several months. So we have a starting block in presence, then we have every 2 weeks, we have 2 hours, and then we have a final course. So it's, for many people, it's really easy to do it. It's no stress, no pressure on the people. And if you are not able to participate in one of the sessions, we are recording the session so that really people have the opportunity, okay, oh shit, I missed one of the sessions, so I can go to the website, Academy Insight, so I log into the website and then I have an opportunity to see this, this last session. So I think that's helpful for patients. So this is our journey, and you can imagine it was a wonderful journey so far. It was really extremely inspiring to work with our medical colleagues and with our researchers colleagues close together. But I think you also realize that this is a marathon. It's not just happen overnight. It will take us a lot of time during the next years. And it needs a lot of also collaboration among the patient community, but also with our colleagues from the medical community. And it also will need a lot of power from everyone really to drive the whole agenda forward. And as I mentioned today, it will need, on a long-term basis, it will need a cultural change, a mindset, a totally different mindset, how we understand research, that research could be also, or should be, something like a partnership effort and not just done by researchers. Okay, I hope that was helpful for you to understand what's going on, and I'm happy also maybe in 1 or 2 years to give you an update. Maybe we learned a lot, so good things, maybe bad things, I don't know, we will see, but I'm really optimistic that we can really drive this forward and that we really can make something like a historic change also in Germany, following our colleagues in the UK, because they did a fantastic job during the last 20 years to build up patient and public involvement. So thank you very much for this. Just looking to the